Instructor Kelthus made the mistake that ended his 20-year career at HO 847 hours, Galactic Standard Time, when he asked the human survival instructor why her species refused to document their most successful rescue operations. Emma Johnson's answer, "Because we don't tempt luck," violated every principle of institutional knowledge preservation and triggered an emergency session of the Academy Council within 90 minutes. "That's not a reason," Kelthus said, his secondary arms gesturing at the holographic display showing humanity's statistical impossibility. "Your species has a 97% survival rate in Class 5 extinction scenarios. 4 civilizations died completely in the Void Breach incident. Humans lost 3 people. 3 out of 4,000 personnel. We need those protocols documented for—" "Nope," Emma interrupted, leaning back in her chair with her feet propped on the desk in a posture that still made the Valorian instructors uncomfortable. "Not happening. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. This is a violation of Treaty Subsection 4471A, Vexia said from the doorway, her wing membranes flaring with agitation. All species participating in the Galactic Survival Training Academy must submit comprehensive after-action reports for any incident with mortality rates exceeding— "Yeah, I read the treaty," Emma said. "I also read the part about cultural exceptions for deeply held beliefs. This falls under that." Kelthus felt his teaching credentials beginning to crumble. In 2 decades of training, the galaxy's best survival specialists, he'd never encountered a species that deliberately withheld life-saving information. "Instructor Johnson, people are dying in situations where human methods could save them. Your refusal to share this data is—" "Exactly how we keep the success rate at 97%, Emma finished. She wasn't smiling anymore. "The moment we start talking about why things went well, they stop going well. It's that simple." "That's superstition," Vexia said flatly. "Yep," Emma agreed cheerfully. "And it keeps us alive." Kelthus pulled up another file, his frustration mounting. The Hadrian Station collapse. 83 species represented. Total casualty count of 9,412. Human casualty count, 0. Not one human died. "How?" "Don't know," Emma said, examining her fingernails. "You were there. You filed a report that said, and I quote, 'Things worked out.' That's your entire analysis of a disaster that killed nearly 10,000 sentients." "Things did work out," Emma said with a shrug. "What else do you want me to say?" "The methods," Kelthus roared, his professional composure finally breaking. "The decision trees, the protocols, the training regimens that allowed your people to achieve perfect survival in a scenario with an 82% mortality rate." Emma met his eyes calmly. "Can't do that." "Sorry." Zara materialized in the office. Council members had emergency teleportation privileges, and her presence made the temperature drop 5 degrees. "Instructor Johnson, I'm invoking Council Authority Mandate 7. You will submit to a complete debriefing about human survival methodologies, or you will be removed from this facility, and humanity's training privileges will be revoked." "Okay," Emma said, standing up. "I'll pack my stuff." "Wait," Kelthus said, shock overriding his anger. "You'd rather lose Academy access than document your survival techniques?" "In a heartbeat," Emma confirmed. "Because the second I start talking about why we survive, we stop surviving. I've seen it happen." Vexia's analytical mind locked onto that phrase. "Explain seen it happen." Emma hesitated, then sighed. "Look, I'm not supposed to even talk about this, but since you're threatening expulsion anyway. You know Captain Marcus Webb? The human who held the record for most successful deep space rescues," Zara said slowly. 73 operations with 100% survival rates across 15 years. "Yeah," Emma said quietly. He held that record until he gave an interview to Galactic News Network talking about his methods. Detailed analysis, step-by-step protocols, really comprehensive stuff. He died 6 weeks later in a shuttle accident. Routine flight, perfect conditions, impossible failure. But it happened anyway. The office went silent. Correlation is not causation, Vexia said, but her voice lacked its usual certainty. Sure, Emma agreed. That's what we thought too. So then there was Lieutenant Sarah Chen. Oh wait, I'm not using her. Let's say Lieutenant Jennifer Martinez. She survived the Kepler-9 biological outbreak when 3,000 others didn't. Published a paper about adaptive response strategies. Died 3 months later from a disease we'd eradicated 2 centuries ago. Statistical anomaly, Kael'thas said weakly. Commander Patricia Anderson, Emma continued. 16 successful evacuations of failing colony worlds. Got interviewed for a documentary series. Detailed every decision, every tactic. Died in her sleep a month after the documentary aired. Perfectly healthy, no medical explanation. You're describing a pattern of, Zara started. I'm describing what happens when humans talk about surviving, Emma interrupted. We have a saying back home, don't tempt fate. And fate is really, really listening when it comes to survival statistics. Kael'thas pulled up the human personnel database, his hands shaking slightly. This is insane. You're telling me that discussing survival success is somehow cosmically dangerous? I'm telling you that every human who's publicly discussed their survival achievements in detail has died shortly afterward under statistically impossible circumstances, Emma said. And I'm telling you that our species learned a long time ago that the universe doesn't like show-offs. Vexia was already running calculations, her fingers flying across multiple data, tablets, accessing human records, cross-referencing survival specialists with public documentation, filtering for mortality data. She stopped, her wing membranes going rigid. Oh. What? Zara demanded. Humans who publish survival methodologies have a 340% higher mortality rate than those who don't, Vexia whispered. Accounting for occupational hazards and exposure time, the correlation is, it shouldn't be possible, but the data is clear. It's not just possible, Emma said. It's reproducible. We figured this out the hard way over about 200 years. The more you brag about conquering death, the more death pays attention to you. Kael'thas felt the foundations of his entire career shifting beneath him. But that violates every principle of knowledge transfer. How do you train new personnel if you can't document what works? We tell stories, Emma said simply, quietly, one-on-one. We talk about what went wrong in great detail. That's safe. That's learning from mistakes. But what went right? We say things like, got lucky, or things worked out, and leave it at that. The knowledge transfers, but we don't claim ownership of it, don't declare mastery over it. This is institutional amnesia, Zara said, but her certainty was wavering. You're deliberately erasing your most successful methodologies. We're deliberately not jinxing them, Emma corrected. There's a difference. Explain the mechanism, Vexia demanded. How does verbal documentation increase mortality risk? Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think I know? You think any human knows? All we know is that it works. Shut up about your successes. Stay humble, knock on wood. She rapped her knuckles on the desk. And don't tempt luck. Follow those rules, and we survive situations that kill everyone else. Break those rules, and suddenly impossible accidents start happening. Luck isn't real, Kael'thas said, but he was running his own searches now and the data was making his stomach turn. Luck is just probability poorly understood. Yeah? Emma challenged. Then explain why every human rescue specialist who's won a public service award has died within a year. Every single one, going back 70 years. We stopped accepting public awards 30 years ago, and guess what? Mortality rates dropped 40%. Vexia trailed off, staring at her tablet. That's exactly what the data shows. Zara pulled up the Academy's own records. The Void Breach. You lost 3 humans. But I see from the unredacted files that 17 humans were initially categorized as probable fatalities, yet they all survived. Things worked out, Emma said firmly. How? Zara pressed. Can't say, won't say, not going to tempt luck by claiming we did anything special. This is absurd, Kalthos said, but his conviction was crumbling. You're asking us to believe that the universe itself punishes those who claim expertise in survival? I'm not asking you to believe anything, Emma replied. I'm telling you why humans don't document successful operations. Believe it or don't, but our 97% survival rate speaks for itself. How's yours? 64%. Kalthos didn't need to look it up. He'd spent his entire career trying to improve that number through better documentation, more comprehensive protocols, more detailed analysis of successful operations. What if you're wrong? Vexia asked quietly. What if this is just confirmation bias and psychological trauma manifesting as superstition? Then we're wrong, and we survive anyway, Emma said with a shrug. But what if we're right, and your whole documentation system is actively making you worse at staying alive? The question hung in the air like a weapon. Zara's communication implant chimed. She listened for a moment, her expression darkening. The council is convening an emergency session. Instructor Johnson, you're required to attend. Am I being expelled? Emma asked. No, Zara said slowly. They want to understand why we've been training the entire galaxy to violate what might be a fundamental cosmic principle. The emergency council chamber held representatives from 43 species, and every single one of them was staring at Emma with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. The head counselor, an ancient Valorian named Hill, gestured for silence. Let me ensure I understand the human position correctly, Hill said, his voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries of accumulated wisdom. You claim that documenting survival success decreases future survival probability. We don't claim anything, Emma said carefully. We observe that humans who talk publicly about their survival achievements tend to die in unlikely accidents. We observe that humans who stay quiet about what went right tend to keep surviving. We act accordingly. But the mechanism, someone started. Unknown, Emma interrupted. Don't know, don't care, just know it works. A crystalline scholar activated its translation matrix. This violates everything we know about information theory and strategic knowledge preservation. Does it violate your survival rates, though? Emma asked pointedly. Uncomfortable silence rippled through the chamber. The Academy has a 64% survival rate in Class 5 scenarios, Vexia said, pulling up holographic displays. Humanity has 97%. If we assume Instructor Johnson's hypothesis is correct, and our documentation practices are somehow cosmically counterproductive, then we've been actively training people to fail. Absurd, Hill said, but his mandibles were clicking in a pattern that suggested deep uncertainty. Is it? Emma challenged. Because I pulled some data before this meeting. Want to know what the survival rate was for Academy-trained personnel before the modern documentation protocols were implemented 300 years ago? She didn't wait for an answer. 81%. You've lost 17 points off your survival rate since you started keeping comprehensive records of successful operations. Coincidence? Yes, Hill said firmly. Scenarios have become more complex, threats more diverse. Humans face the same threats, Emma interrupted. Same scenarios, same complexity. Higher survival rate. Only difference is we don't brag about it. Kalthos found himself speaking before he could stop himself. What you're suggesting would require us to dismantle our entire institutional knowledge base. I'm not suggesting anything, Emma said. I'm explaining why humans won't contribute to it. What you do with that information is your choice. Could we test this? Vexia asked suddenly. Run a controlled experiment? 2 groups, one with full documentation, one with oral-only knowledge transfer? No, Emma said flatly, because that would require documenting the experiment, which would contaminate the results. You can't scientifically study something that becomes dangerous when you study it. That's the whole point. Then how do you know you're right? Rahil demanded. We don't, Emma admitted, but we're alive. Your move. Zara was reviewing data on multiple screens, her expression growing more troubled by the second. I'm seeing a pattern in our historical records. Species that maintain extensive survival documentation average 63% success rates. Species with oral tradition-based knowledge transfer average 78%. The correlation is impossible to ignore, Vexia finished quietly. Or it's a cultural artifact, a methane breather representative suggested. Species that value oral tradition might also value community cohesion, collective decision-making, other factors that improve survival. Maybe, Emma agreed. Or maybe the universe doesn't like it when you get cocky about cheating death. Either way, humans learned our lesson. We don't tempt luck. What about other forms of knowledge? Kael'thas asked desperately. Engineering, medicine, tactical operations? Should we stop documenting everything? I don't know, Emma said honestly. Humans document everything else normally. It's only survival success we don't talk about. Make of that what you will. Rahil was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes studying Emma. If we were to adopt this approach, we would be abandoning millennia of accumulated wisdom. Would you? Emma asked. Or would you be stopping the practice of advertising to the universe that you think you've mastered something you haven't actually mastered at all? Humans believe the universe is sentient? Someone asked incredulously. Humans believe the universe doesn't like show-offs, Emma corrected. Whether it's sentient or just statistical doesn't matter. The result is the same. Zara pulled up another file. The Hadrian Station collapse. Instructor Johnson, you were there. Can you at least tell us if you did anything at all, or if human survival was purely luck? Emma was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Things worked out. People made good choices. We got lucky. That's all I can say. That's not, Zara started. That's all I can say, Emma repeated firmly, because the 3 humans who died at Hadrian, they were the ones who radioed in detailed status updates about their successful evacuation procedures. Full documentation, perfect communication discipline, everything by the book. They died when a support beam fell in a structurally sound corridor. The math said it was impossible. It happened anyway. The chamber went absolutely silent. And the humans who survived? Vexia asked quietly. Maintained radio silence, kept their heads down, didn't celebrate until it was completely over, Emma said. Is that causation? I don't know, but I know which group I want to be in. Rahil's mandibles clicked in what might have been distress. You're asking us to choose between knowledge and survival. I'm not asking you anything, Emma said for the 3rd time. I'm telling you why humans won't contribute to your documentation system. That's all. The rest is your problem, not mine. Kael'thas felt something break inside his worldview. 20 years of carefully building protocols, documenting successes, analyzing every decision that led to survival. And what if all of it had been making things worse? How do we train people without documentation? He asked, and hated how broken his voice sounded. Emma's expression softened slightly. You tell stories. You say, I heard about someone who tried this and it worked out. You pass along the knowledge without claiming ownership of it. You stay humble. You knock on wood. She rapped her knuckles on the table again, and half the council flinched. You don't tempt fate by declaring you've beaten it. That's not systematic, Vexia protested weakly. No, Emma agreed, but it's got a 97% success rate. The vote took 4 hours. When it was done, the Galactic Survival Training Academy had new protocols. Survival successes would be discussed verbally only, in private sessions with no recordings or transcriptions. Public after-action reports would focus exclusively on failures and areas for improvement. Survival statistics would still be collected, but individual achievements would not be documented or celebrated. Kael'thas found Emma in her office afterward, packing up her few personal items. "You're leaving anyway?" he asked. "Figure you don't need me anymore," she said with a shrug. "You've got the basic concept. Stay humble, don't brag, knock on wood. That's really all there is to it." "That can't be all there is to it," Emma smiled slightly. "See, that's exactly the kind of thinking that gets people killed. The moment you think you've figured it all out, that you've mastered survival. That's when things go wrong. Humans learn to stay uncertain. Stay humble. Assume we just got lucky and it might not work next time." "But you do have methods," Kael'thas pressed. "Actual techniques and approaches that improve survival odds." "Sure," Emma agreed. "And we teach them quietly, without fanfare, without claiming they're the answer to anything. We say, this worked for someone once, might be worth trying, instead of, this is the correct protocol for this scenario." "That's maddening." "That's alive," Emma corrected. She finished packing and headed for the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice today. Your survival rates will probably improve." "Probably?" Kael'thas asked. "Can't say for sure," Emma said with a grin. "That would be tempting luck. But between you and me," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "I think you'll do fine. Just don't quote me on that." "Why not?" "Because the moment I start publicly predicting your success, the universe might decide to prove me wrong just to teach me a lesson about humility." She was gone before Kael'thas could formulate a response. 3 months later, Academy survival rates had improved by 8%. Kael'thas wanted to announce it, to publish the findings, to prove that the new approach was working. Instead, he knocked on his desk, a habit he'd picked up without noticing, and said nothing. Vexia found him in his office, reviewing the new statistics in silence. "It's working," she said quietly. "Don't say that out loud," Kael'thas replied automatically, then stopped, horrified at himself. "I'm becoming superstitious." "Or you're becoming a better survival instructor," Vexia suggested. "The humans might be right. Maybe the universe does punish hubris. Or maybe staying humble just leads to better decision-making. Does the mechanism really matter if the results speak for themselves?" "Yes," Kael'thas said. "No, I don't know anymore." "That's very human of you," Vexia said with what might have been approval. They sat in silence, watching the statistics climb slowly upward, and neither of them said a word about it to anyone else. 6 months after Emma left, Kael'thas received a message from her. It was brief. "Heard things are going well. Don't tell anyone. Knock on wood." He rapped his knuckles against his desk, smiled despite himself, and deleted the message without responding. The Academy's survival rate hit 73% by the end of the year. Rahel wanted to hold a ceremony celebrating the improvement. Zara convinced him that doing so would be cosmically inadvisable. Instead, they quietly updated the training protocols and said nothing publicly about the change. Humanity's survival rate remained at 97%, which humans continued to describe as pretty lucky and things working out okay. And somewhere in the vast indifference or malevolent attention of the universe, fate, sentient or statistical, no one could say for sure, moved on to find other targets who hadn't yet learned the value of shutting up about their success. Kael'thas taught survival training for another 15 years without ever publishing another paper about what worked. When students asked why he'd stopped documenting successful operations, he'd just shrug and say, things were working out, didn't want to jinx it. They always laughed, thinking it was a joke. He never corrected them. Some things he'd learned from the humans were better left unsaid.